All praises to the Most High Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai, Bahashem Rahaha Kwadash. Double honors to the elder apostles and elder bishops of Great Millstone who rule well. Peace and salutations to the hopeful elect, scattered throughout the four corners of the earth, laboring in His truth in all sincerity. James chapter 1, verses 14 and 15. And I'm going to read this in the KJV. But every man is tempted when he is drawn away of his own lust and enticed. Then when lust hath conceived, it bringeth forth sin, and sin, when it is finished, bringeth forth death. So the first thing I want to do here is go into the interlinear and look at this word lust. And I believe that's pronounced in the Greek epithemia, if I'm correct.
Strong's G, 1939. Epithumia. Epithumia.
So once again, lust, and this is the outline of biblical usage: desire, craving, longing, desire for what is forbidden, lust. And in the Strong's definition, a longing, especially for what is forbidden, concupiscence, desire, lust, or to lust after. And I had to look up this word here, concupiscence, as well. And this is according to Google AI Overview. Concupiscence is an ardent, typically sensual longing or strong sexual desire. In historical and theological contexts, it generally refers to an all-consuming passion, lust, or disordered inclination to sin and pursue earthly desires. The concept is often broken down into a few distinct categories, which can help clarify its usage. 1. The theological definition. In Christian theology, particularly within Catholic and Lutheran traditions, concupiscence is considered the lingering human tendency or inclination to sin. It is often described as a consequence of original sin. Even after a person is baptized, this inherent pull toward disordered actions and worldly temptation remains. 2. The three types of concupiscence. St. John categorized this desire into three specific manifestations: lust of the flesh, sensual cravings or unrestrained physical appetites; lust of the eyes, the craving for material possessions, greed or covetousness; pride of life, the desire for self-importance, power or superiority over others. Three, usage and etymology. Word forms: the adjective is concupiscent, and synonyms include lust, passion, and desire. Etymology: the word traces back to the Latin concupiscere, meaning to desire ardently, combining calm and intensifier, and cupere, to long for. So let's get back into James chapter 1, 14 and 15 one more time. But every man is tempted when he is drawn away of his own lusts and enticed. Then when lust hath conceived, it bringeth forth sin, and sin, when it is finished, bringeth forth death. So regardless of whatever particular lusts anyone may have, these things develop internally, as we see here in the scriptures. And I'll read it this time one more time in the NLT. Temptation comes from our own desires, which entice us and drag us away. These desires give birth to sinful actions, and when sin is allowed to grow, it gives birth to death. So once again, in the KJV, when he is drawn away of his own lusts, and in the NLT it says, temptation comes from our own desires. So once again, these desires of lust develop internally. These things develop in our own hearts. So it's not so much of the environments that we grow up in, but what has already been lingering inside, the flesh itself, as well as what's been lingering in our spirit. And that is what compels us to go off or to fall victim to our own lusts or temptations. So let's read Jeremiah 17:9. Jeremiah 17:9. The heart is deceitful above all things and desperately wicked. Who can know it? The NLT reads as the human heart is the most deceitful of all things and desperately wicked. Who really knows how bad it is? So the heart is deceitful, and it's actually worded as the most deceitful of all things, desperately wicked. And so this is how, you may hear some people sometimes say, his heart was in the right place, even though he may have gone about something the wrong way. So we hear these types of stories all the time about people doing desperate things people doing desperate things or committing crimes, because they may have felt the need to do so because, their kids didn't have a means to eat. I got to feed my family. I got to feed my kids. This is the type of things you hear people saying. So just giving examples without going way too depth into that, but these type of things happen all the time. And, we read a little bit further here in verse 10, and I'll read this in the NLV. But I, Yahweh, Bahashem Yahweh Shai, search all hearts and examine secret motives. I give all people their due rewards according to what their actions deserve. So whatever secret motives people may have that compels them to do whatever it is that they do, the Most High takes those things into account. And like verse 10 says in the KJV, to give every man according to his ways. So we're in that time right now where, a lot of people are going to start becoming desperate. People are losing their jobs out here, being laid off. All types of things are happening, just in where I live here in CT, one of the largest factories right in my neighborhood here is closed down. So that's 300 people between, I believe it starts on June 20th, if I'm correct, which is tomorrow, and it's going to last until August 4th. That's going to be 300 people that's going to be laid off, and they're shutting down this particular milk factory that's not too far from here. So that's 300 people that's about to lose their jobs. So that's 300 families that's affected. So people are going to start getting desperate out here, so it's just something to keep an eye on. When people, and, the job market is already hard as it is. It's not as easy today to find a job as it was 20 years ago. I'm in my late 40s now. So when I was younger, I'll be honest, I was very rebellious when I was younger. And I was the type of person, if I went to work and my boss or my supervisor, pissed me off, I quit, right on the spot, F you, I'm out of here. And 2 weeks later, I'll be working again, so that's how I was. I wouldn't really pull that now. I wouldn't suggest anyone do that now because the job market is starting to dry up out here, so like I said, so if you're in that situation, or if you know someone in that situation, or like the situation I just mentioned where a fairly large factory around here is about to close in August 4th is its last day, if I'm correct. That's going to be a lot of people walking around here desperate. So it's just something to start keeping an eye on, so let's go into Proverbs 22:3. I'll read this in the NLT. A prudent person foresees danger and takes precautions. The simpleton goes blindly on and suffers the consequences. And this is precisely where we are. This video is about how lust and temptation develop internally and can eventually lead to death. And so the prudent person, the person that's aware of this, we watch this stuff and we understand what the scriptures tell us to take precaution, or the way the KJV explains to us, and hideth himself. We understand that, we want to be, where the Most High can protect us. And in order for that to happen, we have to be doing the right thing out here. Our faith has to remain strong at all times, so, and a lot of it has to do with the fact that, the Most High already has it. He already knows who his people are, who his servants are. He already sees the ones that's down here constantly all the time, putting in the work. So this is what we lean on here. A prudent man foreseeth the evil and hideth himself, and we hide ourselves in this work. We hide ourselves, we try to remain out of the world, to stay as far away from the world as possible. A lot of people are unable to separate themselves from this world, and it's really because the Most High, Yahweh Bashem, Yahweh Shai, have not set them apart. And I'll read a couple of scriptures that backs that up, actually. Like I was stating, we need the Most High, Yahweh Bashem, Yahweh Shai, to set us apart from this world. This isn't something that we can do on our own. Man's comings are of the Most High, Yahweh Bashem, Yahweh Shai. But I'm going to go into Psalms chapter 4 real fast. Psalms 4 and 3 here, which says, you can be sure of this, Yahweh Bahashem Yahweh Shai set apart the godly for himself. Yahweh Bahashem Yahweh Shai will answer when I call to him. And I also want to go into 2 Corinthians 6 and 17 as well to kind of harp on that point a little bit here. Therefore come out from unbelievers and separate yourselves from them, says Yahweh Bahashem Yahweh Shai. Don't touch their filthy things, and I will welcome you. And so the footnote here gives us Isaiah 52 and 11, as well as Ezekiel 20 and 34. So I wanted to go into Isaiah 52 and 11, said real fast here as well. And I'll read this in the NLT. Get out, and leave your captivity, where everything you touch is unclean. Get out there and purify yourselves, you who carry home the sacred objects of Yahweh Bashem, Yahweh Shai. And we know, here we read this here in the KJV, that bear the vessels of Yahweh Bashem, Yahweh Shai. And these vessels is this word. It's our faith, actually. So this is why the scriptures tell us to get out and to leave this captivity where everything we touch is unclean. But we understand that the word is pure. The word itself is pure. The Most High Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai is holy, so his word can be nothing but pure. And that's what our instructions that we were given. We understand what this word is telling us here as far as separating ourselves from this. And we know that the Most High Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai has already set apart his elect. So let's also go into Romans 12 and 2. I'll read this once again in the NLT. Don't copy the behavior and customs of this world, but let Yahweh. Salakia, I'm going to start that over. Don't copy the behaviors and customs of this world, but let Yahweh, Bahashem Yahweh Shai, transform you into a new person by changing the way you think. Then you will learn to know Yahweh's will for you, which is good and pleasing and perfect. So once again, like I said, we've received our instructions on how to overcome this world and its devices. And it starts with our faith in Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai. Basically, without faith, this is an impossible walk. There's absolutely no way to do this if your faith is lacking, or if your faith is only half-assed. This walk is impossible. This isn't something you'll be able to do because the temptations of the world is just too great right now. And they're basically at a point where they're about to back everyone into a corner into making a particular choice here. We do know that choice goes into Revelation 13. It's going to be something that, without faith, a lot of people are going to actually succumb to what's written in Revelation chapter 13, verses 16 through 18. But right now, I just want to harp on this a little bit longer in Hebrews 11 and 6 about faith here. So Hebrews 11 and 6. But without faith, it is impossible to please him. For he that cometh to Yahweh must believe that he is, and that he is a rewarder of them that diligently seek him. And that is our whole purpose, to do what is pleasing to the Most High, Yahweh Bashem and Yahweh Shai, for as long as it takes, basically. Our faith will carry us, no matter, what worldly things we have to do without, or no matter whatever temptations we have to rebuke every single day. Every single day we have to rebuke, particular temptations. It's all types of things that come at us from every angle every day. And, this is where faith comes in. We ask the Most High, Yahweh Bashem and Yahweh Shai, to protect us, to fight these battles for us. Because basically, like I said, without faith, this walk is impossible. So I'm going to begin to wrap this up a little bit, and I'm just going to go into Revelation 3 and 10. And Revelation 3 and 10 reads, "Because thou hast kept the word of my patience, I also will keep thee from the hour of temptation, which shall come upon all the world, to try them that dwell upon the earth." And that is Hamashiach Yahweh Shai speaking. And when it says, "I will keep thee from the hour of temptation," we do understand that to be, and we do know that to be the MOTB, which is, I went into it real briefly a little bit earlier, but Revelation 13 and 16. And also verses 17, "He required everyone, small and great, rich and poor, free and slave, to be given a mark on the right hand or on the forehead. And no one could buy or sell anything without that mark, which was either the name of the beast or the number representing his name." And I want to go back to 2 Corinthians 6 and 17 real fast, just to back that up one more time. "Therefore come out from unbelievers and separate yourselves from them, says Yahweh Bashem and Yahweh Shai. Don't touch their filthy things, and I will welcome you." And we do understand, those filthy things. One of those things right there is the MOTB. So once again, our faith here, we understand that the word of the Most High, Yahweh Bashem and Yahweh Shai, is true. It's true. It's 100% truth. And, it's in our best interest here to, follow these instructions and to not fall into the particular lusts and temptations of this world, and to basically just remain steadfast, and to, keep walking this walk, and basically pray to the Most High, to hold your hand through this walk, because we understand, we don't want him to let our hands go, because that world right now, the temptations of the world, is just way too much for any of us to bear on our own. So we rely on these words, we rely on these promises of the Most High. Once again, it says, "Don't touch their filthy things, and I will welcome you." And so with that being said, I pray that this has been edifying and reaches the ears it's supposed to reach. Shalom.